What's up, YouTube and fellow citizens of the world? My name is Jordan Patrick and welcome to my channel. For those of you who are new, please subscribe, and those of you who are returning, welcome back. You must know that I've been living abroad in France the last 6 years. I'm originally from the US, and every time I go back to the States, I have this sense of reverse culture shock. So today I thought I would talk about the biggest reverse culture shocks that I experience every time I go back to the States. So let's jump into it. Small talk. This is something that just does not exist in France, like at all. And so every time I go back to the States and I'm in line at the supermarkets and I'm buying some groceries, and the teller is asking me about my day and my weekend, like if I have plans, like what I'm up to and everything. And I'm always taken back because I'm just like, oh, she's asking me a question like about my life, like what? And it's not that they really care so much about your life. It's more in the sense that, you know, they're just filling their time by being nice. Ooh, like I didn't have this in my notes, but smiling at strangers, like that's also something you just don't do in France. You're smiling because you're being mischievous, like you want something from them, and so they're a little bit taken back by it. In the States, customer service specifically, it's like you smile when someone approaches you and stuff and you're saying hello, like you smile like, hi, how are you? After experiencing 1 or 2 weeks back home, and like I feel it, like it's so warm and inviting, and then I come back to France and I'm like, oh, you know, back in the cold, figuratively and literally. Okay, so this next point is tips and sales tax. In Europe, the price of an item is exactly what you're gonna pay when you get to the register. There are no like hidden fees. I was like rudely awakened by this when I went back home and I was going to buy, I think it was my first day, like I was going to buy some shoes or whatever, and the price was like, oh, $39.99. And I was like, oh, great, like 40 bucks, awesome. And I go to the register and I have $40 in cash, and then it ended up being like 45 or something like that. And I was like, oh shit, I gotta use my credit card because like I totally forgot like that we don't have. And, oh my gosh, it was really embarrassing actually, because I told the cash register, the teller, or I don't even know what that's called, the salesperson at the register. I was like, oh, but I saw that it was $39.99, but now it's 45 or whatever. And they were like, oh, the tax. And I was like, oh my God. That, and then if you're at a restaurant or in any sort of service, but you also have to add in tips. Like tips are not really a big thing here, like at all. Like if you do have good service or you really enjoyed your experience at the restaurant or whatever, you might leave 1 or 2 euros. It's not expected to leave like 15% of your total bill. I forget that, oh wow, it's like pretty expensive actually if you're going to eat out at restaurants in the US, because like the price that you see is before sales tax and then tip on top of that. Not only like tips for like when you go to restaurants, but also tips when it comes to like getting your hair cut or taking a taxi, or someone helping you with your bags to your room at the hotel and stuff. Like these are all things that we as Americans like are used to and familiar with, but in Europe that's just not really a thing. This next point are the quantity and super sizes of things. I remember specifically one time I get back to the US, I had just taken this 11-hour flight from Paris, and then I arrive in Los Angeles, and okay, my parents, always we go out to eat together like the first night that I get back, and we didn't decide where we were going before we got in the car. So then we just start going towards the center of town, and my parents are like, oh, where do you want to eat tonight? And I start thinking about like, okay, oh, I really want Mexican food. Like, oh, I really want buffalo chicken because buffalo sauce doesn't exist in Europe. And, or like, oh, I really want to go to my favorite restaurant, this or that. Like, but I keep thinking in my head of the meal. And at this time, it's like I was eating really healthy, really cleanly in Europe, and thinking of these different plates at these restaurants, I'm like, my stomach is just not happy with my thoughts. It's just in my brain. I was like, oh, that sounds good. Like normally I would want that because I can't get it back where I'm living. But it takes me some days just to get used to the quantity and the type of food that it is. These last 2 points for today, because there's going to be plenty more later on. But this next one is about the need for having your ID on you at all times. If you're planning on going out to a restaurant and having a beer or wine or drink of any sort with, it doesn't matter even who it is. Like if I'm going to dinner with my parents, and clearly I'm over 21, obviously. I don't want to say obviously. So I've been over 21 for some years now, but even if I'm going to dinner with my parents, it's like I have to have my ID on me because they're most likely going to check. So in France, I have never been ID'd. Like sometimes I just want to take my credit card or something. I forget that, oh yeah, here they're going to check my ID when I get to the front of the bar or the club or whatever. I don't really do clubs in the US, but bars for sure. Another point, you have a lot of restaurants and bars that have TVs that are showing different sporting events. I'm a big sports fan, and every time I go back, for me it's kind of weird because I'll go to eat with friends or family, and if there's a big game happening, it's like there's TVs all around, you'll hear the game happening, and you kind of have to talk over the TVs, so it gets really loud and everything. And here it's much more like respectful and quiet, and like, okay, you're there to eat, enjoy the food and the company of whoever you went to eat with. Whereas in the States, it's like, oh, background noise, no problem. It's like you'll talk over it. Yeah, that was definitely also something that I do miss about the States, and it's always a pleasant surprise when I do go back and I get to experience that again with friends and family. So thank you for watching if you made it to the end. This was just the first part. I'll definitely keep this going. If you did like it, please like and comment some things that if you're living abroad and you go back to the States, what are the things that really give you a shock coming back? I would love to hear about that in the comments below. Until next time, à la prochaine.